Today is April 23rd. I am meeting a buddy of mine at Kinokuniya. Kinokuniya is actually a Japanese bookstore chain that I did not know about until like 2 months ago. And it's really cool. It's just basically a bookstore full of manga, manhwa, some light novels, and some manhwa. They have like Gundams there, then they have, regular bookstore stuff. Materials, journals, pencils, pens, all that stuff, plushies, hand towels for some reason. And then they have like really cool like DIY crafting things, which I'm going to show you guys because I have one at home that I'm going to try and build for my little library bookshelf thing. But yeah, so I'll take you guys in when my buddy gets here and just show you kind of what's going on inside. Take care. So sad because I just recorded an entire video, 24 minutes, and my head was cut off the entire time. That goes to show you how much of a rookie I am. This one should be fine though. Actually, I'm gonna check it real quick. Yep, it's good. All right, we're gonna get back into it. I don't know everything I talked about last video, so we're gonna try and cover everything again. If I miss anything, a loss, that's my loss. That's my loss. We're gonna get better at this, guys, and I'm gonna come back stronger the next video. But anyways, hello, readers, listeners, watchers, literature enthusiasts. My name is Entro, and welcome back to the archives. Today we are talking about a couple of things. First off, you guys probably just saw a clip of me going to the local Kinokuniya that's by me. Kinokuniya is a bookstore that has a lot of manga, manhwa, and other Japanese products. I say mainly Japanese because they actually have like how to learn Japanese texts and textbooks and things like that. They have, the usual bookstore things, journals, pens, pencils, all those things. And they also have a section, this small one had also a DIY kind of section as well. Now this one isn't as big as the one that I went to previously. That's like 20 minutes away from me. That one's an actual full-fledged bookstore. It's the size of your local half-price books or something like that. It's pretty good. But this one was a smaller one inside like a supermarket or something, but it was still really nice. And I just went there with a friend because I wanted to check out how it was. But what I wanted to show you guys was not on this words. I did not get this at the smaller Kinokuniya. I got it at the larger bookstore. But I got a DIY project to do for my own bookshelf. It's called Sam's Study, and it's basically a bookshelf model that's gonna go into my bookshelf. So I'm gonna have a bookshelf in my bookshelf. And I originally saw this, and I've always been interested in DIY things. I just never did them because it's like, what fun is there to do something alone instead of doing it with someone else? I don't really have anybody else to do it with. But I thought this might be nice because I'm just a sucker of doing anything that comes to books, and fleshing out the aesthetic in my background, and my bookshelf is always something that I like to do. I'm always something that I'm keen on. So I thought this might be fun. I'm gonna try working on this summer. I will video every time I'm working on it. I'm gonna just try and record the entire time, so I can, mash it all together for one kind of montage of me making it, and you guys can see like the bare bones to when it from how it started to how it ended, how many times I raged because, oh my god, you guys see all these little small things, right? Small little paintings, little books, little pictures, little knickknacks. Yeah, I have to glue all that on. Oh, this is gonna be so hard. Oh, I'm gonna be so scared. I'm gonna be so scared to mess things up because I'm really bad at not reading instructions, thinking I know what I'm doing, and then messing it up. So we might have to watch a follow-along video for it. But if you see like the box it came in, there's a lot of stuff in here. There is legitimately a ton of stuff in here. It's crazy how much stuff is in here. And there's a paintbrush in here. Oh geez. I wonder what that's for. Okay, that's fine. We will get to this later on in the month, hopefully, and I will bring you guys along for that ride. Aside from that, let's get into the rest of today's video. Water. Yo, if water could sponsor me, shout out water. That's the only bev that I drink. Why did I say bev? Oh, I said bev because in one of my Discord groups, people start talking about bevs as beverages. Oh geez, I don't like that. Anyways, welcome back. Okay, we're gonna talk about the books now, the actual books. Ranger's Apprentice. So, Ranger's Apprentice is a book written by an Australian author, John Flanagan. John Flanagan actually worked in marketing and advertising, and he wasn't really planning to be an author, it seems, because he wrote the first book, The Ruins of Gorlon, as a series of short stories, and the short stories were meant for his son, to get his son into reading more. And you know, I don't know the rest of the story. Maybe there's videos of like interviews with him online about it, but basically it went from those short stories into book one, and then here we are 13 books later, 2 prequels later, and 6 sister books later, or sister stories later. And it's crazy how that works, right? Things that you don't intend to do, kind of. He wasn't intending to write a book and sell it as a best-selling, and it just happened because he was doing something for his son. And I think that those kind of stories are always the most interesting to me, because a lot of the times you hear people's success was, oh yeah, I was just doing it for a couple of friends and I thought I could scale it up, or something like that. And I always find those interesting, and you know, maybe try to replicate those in my own way at some point, or maybe I'll try to rather. But anyways, the cool thing is that, or not the cool thing, the interesting thing that I thought when I read that he wrote these books for his son was that he wrote the books for his son to get his son into reading. I'm usually, when I'm in a reading slump, I'll go back to these books to get myself back into reading, because they're a very simple read. They are about a 250-page book. It's not a thick book at all. The text is not super small either. It's decently sized text to where you can get through the book pretty quickly. And if you're anything like me, I don't always read the thick paragraphs of imagery. I'll just scan them and then go to the dialogue, because a lot of the times the dialogue is where the story is. But then I'll get to the dialogue, have no idea what happened, and then go back into the thick imagery paragraph and scan again. But yeah, the books aren't long at all, and they're very simple. I think the simplicity of the books are what kind of gives them their, what's the word for it? Their allure, almost, not their allure, but it's like, what is the word for it? I don't know what the word for it is. We're just gonna go with allure, but you know what I mean. The simplicity is what gives it its charm. And I think that if you are in a reading slump, or you're trying to get into reading, or you're trying to, you know, maybe you don't have time to commit to a large book, so you want to do a couple of, you know, quick reads here and there, I think these would be really good for, like, if you wanted to read one of these in a couple of days, put it down, pick up another book, something like that. They're very good for that. Now, I will say, before we get any further, that if you do want to read these books, it is a series. Obviously, it's 13 books in a series, but it's not one of those series that the conflict starts and resolves in the same book. Conflicts do carry through other books and future books. So this is not something it is not something that's going to be wrapped up in a neat tied bow at the end, and you can put it down and don't have to worry about the other books. You might actually be more interested into reading the other books, which makes sense. And so let's talk about the premise of the book. The premise of the book, Ranger's Apprentice, is the story of Will, young 15-year-old boy who gets chosen to be the apprentice of the local ranger. Now, the Rangers are a set of, how do I put this? They're basically an information network for the king. Let's back up. Now that I said that. The Ranger's Apprentice is set in the country of Araluen. Araluen is a country comprised of 50 fiefs. A fief is like an estate or a castle. It's basically a state in what you would call like our current America, 50 states. So basically a fief is equivalent to a state. You have your king, and then you have your 50 barons, one baron for each fiefdom, and one ranger is assigned to each fief. So the ranger is basically the king's information, like liaison in a sense. He basically advises the baron on behalf of the king. The ranger responds to the king. He does not work for the baron. A lot of the times in the book, you'll see that rangers make decisions that the barons aren't very happy with or like, but that's because rangers know that they don't answer to the baron, they answer to the king. And rangers hold enough power to where if a baron is acting not respectfully, he's not upholding the honor of the king, whatever it is, the ranger has the power to kind of put them in their place almost. So I kind of like that dynamic of like the checks and balances kind of thing. So Will gets appointed to being the Ranger's Apprentice, not out of his own will. Pun was not intended, and I did not like it. He did not do it out of his own volition, but it's a really great story there on after. And you'll see all that in like the first chapter or 2 chapters of the book. And the story basically is about Will, but John Flanagan also has what I like to call sub-main characters, and then he has like supporting characters. So you have Will, his mentor, in my opinion, is like a sub-main character. Maybe he's more of a supporting character because of his interactions with the other characters. But then he also has his 4 friends. All 5 of them were orphans as they grew up. I feel like some of them are sub-main characters. Some of them are supporting characters. So that's the premise. It's basically Will's journey to becoming a ranger and the stories within, which I think is a really nice setting. If we go into, let's break it down this way. Let's break it down into what I like to call the four I guess categories that I kind of look at when I read books and kind of think through books. The first is, what kind of story is it? What kind of conflicts do they have? What are the plot points and things like that? And the story of this is really just Will's growth into a ranger. Alongside of that, it is obviously his adventures throughout the kingdom, throughout neighboring countries and things like that. I will say, a lot of the times when I read books, authors put in really stupid plot points that extends the conflict, and I really don't like that. I don't like it when you just put some sort of weird plot armor thing in there to where you know how it logically should have ended, but it didn't, and they didn't want it to end that way because it would have ended instead of extended the story. so they extended the story instead. I think John Flanagan does a really good job of wrapping up the conflicts neatly, and if needed, and other conflict arises, maybe in tandem or in tangential to the first conflict, but it's not set up to where, like, where did that come from? You just put that there to extend the conflict, you know? So the conflicts are, and the plot points are actually pretty good in the story. They're not super complex. This is a very simple read. It's for middle schoolers, for kids. But they're very well put together. They can be predictable. I will say, skipping forward a little bit, I did get a little bit bored with book 5, which is the Sorcerer in the Sorcerer of the North, because when the book started, I was like, okay, cool, new like let's see what's happening. And within like a couple of chapters, I understand where this is going, and it was a little boring, but it was still a good ride, you know. But yeah, I look at the plot is good, the story itself is simple, it's not convoluted to where it's not fun to read, and the conflicts and the antagonists and the protagonists and like their interactions are decent. They're actually really good. He has a very good mix of comedy and seriousness in the books. I personally love interjecting comedy in stressful points. That's how I live my life. Ask anybody who knows me. I will try and joke in serious moments. Ask my fiance when we're having talks. The main, I think, drawback to the story is that, and this leads into when I talk about characters next, is that the characters are kind of static. So the story, you really rely on the story to tell you a lot more about the characters, because the characters themselves are kind of static and predictable. Train. The characters, like I was saying, are pretty static, and there's not very many dynamic characters in this novel, in my opinion. And you could look at it one of two ways. You could look at static in the terms of they did not change at all, or you can look at, and then dynamic is, you know, their personality, their traits, the overall character had growth throughout the story or the plot. I look at it as how much growth was there. Was it like an actual personality shift? Was it a natural progression, or was it spurred by conflict, or was it like, you know, because of the plot somebody got angry and did XYZ, but then they went back to their old ways? That's, to me, that's still static, right? You didn't necessarily change, you just behaved a different way because of what was happening to the plot and the conflict. Excuse me. Watch her. So, getting to point. So point number 1 was plot, conflicts, setting, things like that. Point number 2 is the characters. And I really enjoy the characters in the novel, but they're simple, static characters, and he wrote them that way because a middle schooler needs to be able to understand what's going on in the story. It is what it is. The interactions between the characters I love. There are many comedic moments that I just eat up. I love comedic moments. And so you have the interaction between your more stoic, sarcastic, more thinky rangers, and then you have your kind of simple, steadfast, straightforward warriors and kind of not meatheads, but people who like to act versus think things through all the time. So you have the interactions between the two when someone's saying something sarcastic and the straightforward warrior's like, oh, really? And it's like, no, stupid. But I love those comedic moments. They're really fun, and they're throughout the book. It's not like 5 chapters of seriousness, 1 chapter, like 1 sentence of comedy, 5 chapters of seriousness. No, it's a very light ride throughout the entire thing. Love it. So, all in all, the characters are great. They're not super deep. Some of them are deep. Some of them are more surface level because they don't need to be deep for a story like this. When we get into more books, I will show you guys some actual, I think, deep characters that I think you'll agree that in comparison, these guys are pretty simple. Which, once again, it's no issue that they're static or dynamic. It's not. I actually don't prefer dynamic over static. I just enjoy a good overall character. And then jumping from the character, I look at the combat system in stories. So combat system can be physical combat or magic systems. And in this book, they do not have magic. So it's all, swords, battle axes, spears, horses, shields, bow and arrows, throwing daggers, sax knives, things like that. Very simple weaponry. And I still enjoy that a lot. I love me a great magic system. Sorry, I had to take a big breath there. I love a good magic system. Give me an intricate magic system that's reliant on both the external medium to channel, the external device to channel your magic, and the need for internal stability to bring out that power in yourself. Put that together, you have my money, you have my time, you have my brain, you have my attention, you have everything from me. I will literally go and draw my own version of what I think your magic system looks like because I love it so much. Getting off on a tangent. The reason I love Ranger's Apprentice, because he has bows and arrows. Oh my god, there's a mace here. Oh, I haven't even gotten to that book yet. But there's a mace on the cover of one of these. We got maces. Let's go. We got variety. But anyways, I love bow and arrows with a passion. I think this, actually, no. This book further increased my love of bow and arrows. I started loving bow and arrows because I would play the online RPG Dragon Fable, a spin-off of Adventure Quest. If you guys know what I'm talking about, leave it in the comments. We gotta talk about Adventure Quest and Dragon Fable one day on a non-archives related video. But I'm a sucker for, when I'm gaming, for any archer, like ranged class, archer or mage. So this book has the archers, and that's why I love the rangers. The rangers, they use bow and arrows, they use throwing daggers, they, what's it called? What's the word for it? They wear cloaks that are basically camouflage, so they can move without being seen and blend into the background. And I love that John Flanagan's imagery of the combat system, mixed in with the camouflage system of the Rangers. His imagery is great in those times. Honestly, one of my favorite imagery moments is actually in the first book. Where is it? I got this from the public library, so I 100%, that's not my bookmark. Yeah, I think it's in chapter 3. Is it in chapter 3? No. Ooh, it's in chapter 5. If you read this book, chapter 5 is one of the best chapters of book 1 because it's basically a pure imagery of how the main character is just sneaking around in the nighttime and just sneaking everywhere. And the way John Flanagan portrays, him sneaking into the shadows, and it's windy outside, so the shadows are moving as the trees are moving, and so you wait for the shadow of the tree to come towards you, and then as it's upon you, you then go into the shadows, move with the shadow of the tree into the next shadow, and things like that. Oh my god, it's so good. So good. But, sorry, another tangent. I can talk a lot about these books. Getting back to the combat system, very simple system. Bow and arrows, swords, all those things. And there's not a ton of like situations where it's like, oh, it's a lot of heavy combat. but there's a lot of like one-on-ones. There are a couple of wars in between, or actually no, there's a couple of wars in the books where you see kind of one regiment versus one battalion, and the strategy that goes into how are we setting ourselves up to counter them and things like that. I actually really enjoyed that. I'm not into politics a lot, but when it comes to political or strategy building in combat, I love that. Not a big fan of the diplomatic side, but when it comes to strategy building, love that. So the combat system, very simple, very straightforward, very good. The last thing is actually the world building. Now, the world building for me is it's probably more, I can't say it's more important, but if you have really bad world, if you have really bad world building, I will not like your book. I'm sorry. But let me caveat that by saying, if you're not trying to build a world in your story, then what I said doesn't count. It's an exception. If your story revolves around one setting and then maybe branching out into like one area, branching out into like, hey, here's a forest nearby, or here's the next town, and then coming back to the main town, but your story is revolved around what's happening in that one area, that's your story. I can't argue with that. If you attempt to build a world, then you have to do it right. That means you have to give the other parts of the world their own characters that are significant. They just can't be block characters. They have to be interesting characters. They have to have interesting, unique traits to themselves, right? Which I think most authors understand that, but I have come across some books where the world building was just weird. Like, I wasn't engrossed in what was happening at all in other countries. But in this book, you have Arluen, you have Gallica, you have Celtica, I think is what they're called. You have Scandia, you have, it's the Aridi, but I forgot what their nation was called. But you have all these different countries, neighboring countries, and their interactions in between. And it's not like Arluen is a kingdom with 50 states. Scandia is another kingdom with like 37 states. And Gallica is another kingdom or another country with whatever, right? No. Scandia is ruled by a ruler. They're sea wolves. They go on they sail the seas and raid other towns along the coasts. They're basically an iteration of Scandinavians. You have the Aridi folk, who are desert people, who have their own their own type of battles, their own breed of horses that help them get across the desolate lands much more easily than the larger, heavier horses of like other countries like Arluen. You have Gallica, which is a country where there are no legit rulers. Everybody's fighting for a piece of like ruling, like for a piece of leadership themselves. So like leadership changes as like one person gets killed, another person takes his place, things like that. So they're all very different. So the world building is really not bad. I was pretty surprised, because generally world building it's hard to, it's sometimes hard to get across good world building in a simple book, because you don't want to make the world too complicated, because your story itself, your characters themselves are straightforward, simple. But John Flanagan does a pretty good job about that, pretty good job about laying out the land, all that stuff. He did not include a world map. And let me tell you right now, if you're trying to make a book, if you're trying to write a book, and you have a book and you're trying to build a world, and why did I open up the first book again? And if you're trying to build a world inside of it, do me a favor, and do all of us a favor. Dramatic pause. Pay somebody and draw up a map of your world. Because I don't know, when I'm reading, I'm not cognizant of what going west, east, north, south, and all in between means. I'm just reading. So if you give me a world map, I know where things are. and I'm that much more engrossed in the setting when you're actually writing your imagery to me and you're making me imagine where I am. I know. Now, you can make the argument that the whole point is for the imagery to let you know and let you make it in your brain. I get that. But dude, a lot of people do that. I think if you read the Aragon series, world map. You read the Seven Realms series, world map. You read more series that are escaping my brain, world map. Put a map in your books. That's all I'm gonna ask for. But coming back to the point, the world building is really good in this book. I like it a lot. I don't want to spoil a lot of it. I kind of already told you the countries and what they are, but you'll see the characters themselves. And those are my 4 categories, plot/conflict, characters, combat system, and world building. Those are what I look at. I'm really interested in knowing what you guys look at when you read books, if you read books for these purposes. If you're just reading to have a good time, you don't think about any of this, dope. But if you actually think about these things, let me know what you think about. Maybe I'm missing something. I would like to know. So coming back to all 4 of those things, I think this is a very good 6/7 out of 10 book in my opinion. It's simple, it's basic, it gets the job done. It's not going to be your top 5, probably not. Even though I go back to these books every few years, it's not my top 5, to be honest. But it's probably my top 10 just because it's just so consistent. It's such a consistent series of you can read this and you're good. You will have a good time. You will enjoy your time here. It's not going to take you for a wild ride and make you want to put the book down because you're just what is happening? That doesn't go on in the books. Very good. Now, that being said, there are 13 books to this series. After that, there are 2 technically maybe prequels that he calls the early years that are kind of the prequel to I think the first book. And then you have the sister series called the Brother Band Chronicles. I'm so sorry that I've had to do a lot of that I've been so nasally. This always happens when I'm recording videos. It's probably because I'm talking a lot. The sister series, the Brother Band Chronicles, I really want to read these because I actually haven't read these. I've only read up to book 10, not even 11 or 12. Because once I stopped reading these books, I completely forgot that he was writing more when I fell off reading. So definitely gonna go back and read those. I'm recommending to you guys, read these books. Read them. They're really good books. And the first 3 themselves are decent. I will say, generally, he kind of has a 2-book trend when it comes to conflicts. Conflict starts in book 1, gets resolved in book 2, new conflict arises at the end of book 2, basically wraps up, and then new conflict in book 3 goes into book 4, gets wrapped up in book 4, new conflict in book 5 starts, and then gets wrapped up in book 6, book 7 starts. So they're very nice that way. I would very much recommend reading them. And if you want a bit more detail on the books, let me know. I will do my best to supply that. But I think that is a good stopping point for today. If you feel like I didn't answer any questions that maybe you had about the books, drop them down below. I can cover them in the next video. If there's things that you might want me to consider and then respond to as I read other books, let me know. I'm always down for questions and comments and conversation. Train. And per usual, I really appreciate you listening, you joining me today. Whether you're watching, you're listening, you just clicked and hit the like button, then left. If you clicked, heard my voice, heard me sniffle and left. If you actually made it all the way to this point and you're getting sick of me and you're leaving, or if you just put me on in the background and you're like, he's a homie, I'm gonna give him the watch time. Shout out to you, bro. And with everything said and done, I appreciate you all. Thank you for joining me on another episode of, why do I keep saying episode? This is not an episode, another video on this channel. Welcome to the archives. Oh my god, I forgot to mention. This is my reading nook. This is a very, very, very weird ending, but this is basically my reading nook where I kind of chill and read. I'll turn my LEDs on at nighttime in the evenings. It's a weird way to say it. And I'll just lie down here, talk to people, chill, read, just relax. I really recommend, if you guys don't have it already, like if you want to get into Zen activities, make a spot in your home that provides you Zen for those activities, provides you a calm area for those activities. For me, it's this. This is so cozy, and I'm almost always just like this, reading. It's so nice. It's amazing. Highly recommend. But aside from that, I'm thinking about kind of talking about our books in the nook, and then maybe talking about other things at the desk. I'll see how I feel. I've taken up a lot of your time already. Once again, I appreciate you guys. Leave a like, leave any comments that you have. I always appreciate feedback on how to make things better. I am trying different things. I'm trying to get a better mic, actually, because I just hated picking up the cars and the train in the background, but we'll fix all that throughout the year, and I just appreciate you guys being with me on this journey. Aside from that, bye.